Welcome to the Cosmic Cafe Show, where the paranormal is normal. My name is Eric Brown, and I'll be your host and server. And for today's daily special at the cafe, we are brewing up the questions about ancient aliens called the Anunnaki. Are the Anunnaki our gods? Do they help mankind to evolve? Were they responsible for unleashing nuclear war here on Earth? To help us answer these questions today is our good friend, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and his wife, Janet Kira Lessin, who live in Hawaii and are visiting us here in our studios in Northern California. Welcome to the cafe,
Aloha.
Janet.
Thanks for
Sasha.
having us.
Aloha. Yes, I should have said aloha, shouldn't I?
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for dropping by. I know Hawaii's a little bit of a drive, so to speak.
Long swim.
Long swim. So tell us about the Anunnaki. Now, before you get into it too much, I just want to let you know I am a bit of a novice on Anunnaki, and I'm sure a lot of our audience are. Maybe they never even heard of the Anunnaki before this show. So just want to kind of prep you there. So, but please tell us, are the Anunnaki our ancient aliens?
They are the ones that said they are aliens. They told the Sumerians, who wrote down what they said, that they were from another planet.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's true or not.
Okay.
It's up to the audience to just look at the stories. For me, I started out with the story of Noah.
Right.
And how in the world did that guy ever get all those animals on his boat? And then I became an anthropologist, and I studied with Zachariah Sitchin.
Right.
And he said for me to really look at all those myths that are all over the world about these so-called gods. They weren't gods. They were just big people like us, and I'll explain why later in the show.
You said you actually worked with Zachariah
I
Sitchin?
studied with him.
We
I was in
both
his
did.
first certification class.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
He asked me if I would write something simple and on shows like yours, and this is what I wrote. It's called Anunnaki, Gods No More, because they're not gods. They're just big people with
Right.
high technology and some good habits and some bad habits that they passed on.
I imagine a simple analogy would be kind of like us with our technology that we have, our iPhones, our other smartphones, our computers, laptops. We take that into a primitive society that's maybe been isolated, high in the mountains or deep in a jungle or something, and they would kind of look at us the same way. Is that right?
Absolutely right. We're like cargo cults. Come back, come back, come back. The way that the natives of Papua did for the GIs after World War II.
Wow.
But there's no back to come. There's some of them that might come back. We are they, adapted to this environment here.
Right. To me, the evidence is overwhelming that they are our ancestors.
Yeah.
If you look at all the anomalies around the earth, that we can't do it. We can't do the pyramids. We can't move these stones that are tons, hundreds and thousands of tons big.
Right.
So we have all the global anomalies which are part of a grid,
Yeah.
an energy grid, and we're looking at the sonar. We're getting more and more of the ruins, and we're seeing that this was a global society. So the evidence is overwhelming that they were here, but they never left. They're still here. We can track it from the ancient through the modern,
Right.
which we'll do a little bit of it on this show here today.
Well, that sounds exciting. I can't wait to get deeper into it here at the cafe. And so, where did the Anunnaki come from? Maybe that's a good place to start. Let's assume that they exist, and if they do exist, then where did they come from?
Okay, these were big, tall people that said they came from...
Tall, dark, and handsome?
They looked just like
blonde and
us. They had
blue-eyed.
the same variety of as our population. Matter of fact, we are them.
Okay.
They said they came from another planet that passes through our inner solar system every 3,600 years. It's sped up since then. And
so is it a planet
yes,
of our solar system, or that just is part of another solar system?
It's both. It's part of a binary solar system. Our sun, Solaris, has a partner, which is a red subdwarf named Nemesis. We know it's there from infrared and it's the gravitational things that it causes. And so they go around their planet, and sometime in their, every 3,600 years, they pass, Nibiru is the name of their planet, or Planet X.
Okay.
It comes through between Jupiter and Mars, where
Okay.
Earth used to be, they said, before this, their planet knocked it into its Earth into its present position between Venus and Mars, and left a bunch of stuff, crumbs, called asteroids between Jupiter and Mars.
Oh, okay. I always thought that Planet X was blown up and became that asteroid belt that's out there.
That's another alternative explanation, which may be true. There is also the possibility that there was another planet called Maldek, which is further out and created another asteroid belt, the Kuiper asteroid belt. It may be the same, it may be different. We really don't know.
Okay.
And each of those explanations could account for the data. What we do know that's very fascinating is that the Sumerians had these star charts that showed Neptune and Uranus and things out of human vision. And a lot of other things that if what the Anunnaki, that Anunnaki means people from the sky. That's what these people said to call them. And so they said that since their planet knocked the ancient proto-Earth called Tiamat into its present position, the asteroids should then logically be made of the same stuff as Earth. And lo and behold, we get out there, it's true. They said that they landed on Mars, there was water on Mars. Our scientists, it can't be water on Mars. But there's water on Mars. And there's water on the asteroid Ceres, the asteroid that we're currently looking at, has water. And a whole bunch of other things. The way they explain things seems silly, like planets talking to each other, but if you regard those as metaphors, you're saying, oh, the planet's gravity affected each other and things like that.
Right, right. Interesting.
Right.
You look like you wanted to add to.
Well, I just wanted to add that they discovered Planet X Nibiru because of its influences on the outer planets. That's why they started searching. Well, that's how they discovered Neptune and you know, how our ancient astronomers going back a couple hundred years ago discovered all the planets on the outer edges of our solar system. So they eventually found Planet X that way, or they know there's a Planet X that way, and then we correlate that with the ancient Sumerian stories of Planet X, Nibiru, and it's a match.
Oh, that's very, very interesting. I mean, how do you? I guess one question I'm getting, and maybe some in the audience, how did you guys even? And where's the information? Is it just all folktale, or has it been written down somewhere?
It's been written down. Zachariah Sitchin, our teacher, has the greatest collection of these clay Sumerian writing tablets that they left, and it's the basis of statues. We have this very, very complete story of what these guys dictated. And if you want a hypothesis about what's happening in the solar system or geography, it's a good place to look. For example, they said, there's land under the ice of Antarctica, and this is what it looks like, and they gave us maps. Lo and behold, we do ultrasound underneath the ice, that's what it looks like. They said there's 4 rivers that go through Mesopotamia, Eastern Mediterranean, but we only see 2, the Tigris and Euphrates.
Right.
Put ultrasound on it, wow, there was a mile-long river, the Gihon, as big as the Mississippi, and we can tell it used to be there. So if we don't know, we can at least look at what they dictated and say, well, this is a hypothesis. What would it take to prove it right or wrong?
Right, wow.
So they're in Akkadian and Sumerian, and there were other researchers that uncovered them and deciphered them, like Noah Kramer, who I think died in the 50s somewhere. So Sitchin was the latest in the researchers that were doing the deciphering of the cuneiform tablets. So they were literally written in stone. And these are the precursors to the biblical tales. And when you go back and you read the original stories before they got translated into the Bible, you see how things have been warped and changed. And so it's very interesting to go back to the origin stories of all these tales.
Key, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, they came here to get gold.
So that's their motivation.
They came here for the gold. They wanted the gold.
That's why we went to Alaska and California. Go west, young man. Get the gold, right?
Think about it. Why is gold so important? So if we go back in time to the original story, why gold is so important, it makes more sense. So
well, my gold's important because my wife gave it to me.
Right.
So they wanted it to turn it into white powder of monoatomic gold, which floats, which they were going to float up into their ionosphere and hold in their air as they traveled through space. They had tried nuking, they had nuclear weapons. They tried nuking their volcanoes, but that didn't work. and their scientists said gold might work, and they knew gold was here, and so they came here to get gold, and it was in the course of trying to get the gold that they decided we have to create workers, because the workers we brought from Nibiru are grumbling, they don't want to do the work, there's work stoppages, and that's when their chief scientist said, I know what to do. We'll adapt our genome to Earth using a few genes from this very intelligent human that's already here, and that's Bigfoot's ancestor, Homo erectus. And so they made mind slaves. That's how we were created in the first place. We are they.
Right, and they liked Homo erectus because they saw that they were letting these other animals out of traps. They were scientists, and so they were capturing all the different species, and they were doing experiments on them. And they noticed that this species was so intelligent, it was able to let them out of the traps, and it was compassionate. It felt for these animals that probably were crying out, and so they thought this would be the ideal species to adapt to make a hybrid species between the Homo erectus and the Anunnaki.
Ah, okay. Now this is written down in those Sumerian tablets?
It's totally written down in the Sumerian tablets, and Michael Tellinger has actually found the lab in Greater Zimbabwe,
Really?
And the mines in South Africa that they used before the Great Flood, and they shifted most of their operations to South America and Central America after that. But we found it. It's all that's been collaborated.
Wow. How come we don't get this in our history books?
Because the powers that be don't want us to know the truth.
There's a vested interest in making slow, incremental Darwinian evolution what you have to say that's how it happened. But there is no missing links. We didn't come from small mammals and evolve. We're full human beings that were there all of a sudden 300,000 years ago, and then of course they kept making babies with the prettiest girls, and 200,000 years ago, and Enki himself, the chief scientist, had a baby with his overseer's wife, and that baby was Noah. We're here talking because of him.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Right.
So Noah's actually quite possibly a lot older than any of us ever imagined. I mean, there's tales he was a couple hundred years.
He's 13,000 years ago or so.
Wow.
When they knew Nibiru was coming, the Antarctic ice sheet was about to slide into the South Sea and cause the Great Deluge. They warned their half-breeds, the people who had intermarried with Earthlings, to go to the high ground. The leaders circled the globe until the flood was over, and some of them, the Anunnaki, that's what they're called. That means people from the sky, and that's where their rockets came, rocket ships. They went around, they saved the Hopi and Zuni and other people that they could. The people they had another spaceport at Tiwanaku. They took off from Nazca, and so that was a place where they were okay. They sheltered on an island in the middle of Lake Titicaca.
Oh.
And Noah may still be alive. If you follow the epic
Really?
of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh found Noah, and Noah and his wife were still alive. And so it correlates with the Sumerian story that God and the old Yahweh said, well, you've survived the flood, so we're going to gift you with longevity. Oh. So they have turned off our longevity. Human beings have the capacity of living millions of years, just like the Anunnaki.
Really?
And that's what our modern human genome researchers are working on, is physical immortality. But back to Noah, so Gilgamesh found them alive. They were eating a plant. So we know that monatomic gold and some kind of plants help us maintain our longevity and immortality. And so at the end of the story, we weren't sure what happened to Noah, but Noah could be still alive somewhere and hidden from, of course, us, or maybe he walks among us and has tea with us now and again.
Well, hang on a second. Noah, if you are watching this show, or somebody knows Noah that's watching this show, please contact me at thecosmiccafeshow.com. I'd love to have you as a guest. And also, we want to find out what that plant is. Anyways, but, speaking of longevity, and you kind of touched in on genome and such, so you're talking about bioengineering hundreds of thousands of years ago, taking the Bigfoot and crossbreeding him with the Anunnaki and creating basically what we are sitting here now.
Right.
Except it wasn't exactly crossbreeding. We're not half Bigfoot. It was just a little of their genes,
Right.
enough
Okay.
to make us. They
They're
added
different.
clay, they added copper, they added mitochondrial DNA from using the wombs of Nibiru Anunnaki women. They're medical practitioners, and the first. Adam, the first one they created,
Okay.
he was red-brown of skin.
Oh, okay.
The first girl, Tiamat, was a blonde, blue-eyed person, the first conscious, totally conscious creation that they made.
Wow.
And it wasn't just that they were kind and empathetic that their genes were chosen. The makers wanted to do the new species, us, to do better than they did. They had thermonuclear wars. They were women were totally dissed and put down. They had a dictatorship. They wanted us to be a more loving and spiritual. That's why we were created, to be more loving and spiritual.
Yeah.
Right.
I wish it would show out a little bit more in our world population.
Well,
so
we're
if
starting
we're
to get
if we're the loving spiritual hybrid, the crossbreed, then it makes me kind of wonder how aggressive were the Anunnaki.
Terribly.
Well, they were teaching us how to war, and that's
Seems like some of us learned that lesson
and
pretty
some
good.
of us learned it very well. However,
Yeah.
that deep spiritual part is within each and every one of us,
Yeah.
and it's a choice to access that part or not.
Okay.
And so, just don't own being violent. I'm not violent. They say humanity's violent, and I go, well, I'm not. So
This
don't
is true.
don't
Yeah. Don't lump me in that song.
don't lump me into that one.
So,
Yeah.
they basically they warred on us. They basically were trying to pit us against each other, so we wouldn't realize there was only about 900 to 1,000 of them, and there were millions of us. So
Right.
when one of them championed the Earthlings' cause, a fellow named Marduk or Ra, he built this great big launch tower in Babylon. He wanted to conquer Nibiru back too. He thought he should be king of that.
Okay.
But they bombed it. That was the Tower of Babel, and they said, keep these people speaking different languages, using different scripts, and let them war against each other so they never turn on us.
I want to go back in time though, because
Back in time.
yeah,
Okay.
we forgot to tell about the creation story about the rule of Nimma. So
Oh,
we have,
okay.
we have three characters that created humanity. We have Enki, who was the chief science
Okay.
officer, and we have his sister Nimma, and she was a chief medical officer, and we have Enki's son Nagashita. And Nimma was the one that figured out that they had to mix add mixture into a vessel of clay because they were using glass or something and it wasn't working. They had all these experiments. They had some humans that they couldn't urinate, they couldn't talk, they couldn't walk, and so they kept experimenting. And they also made the chimeras and the different unicorns and centaurs and all kinds of different beings.
So those mythological creatures from Greek mythology and even from the Egyptian paintings that we've seen, those are actually real?
They are real,
Yes.
and they're experiments, and
So
they were
they-
having fun. Just like our scientists today are experimenting with DNA, and they're mixing, cow DNA and pig DNA, and
I just
they
kinda
make
thought that was
fluorescent
always-
cats and stuff like that.
I always thought that was just, artist, liberty.
Right.
They make the different critters
Well, they
or
were
creatures or
in
tell
danger
stories.
of perishing, so they had to figure it out. So it wasn't an art form for them. They had to figure out what kind of species would be intelligent enough to follow orders, but wouldn't be too intelligent to just say, kiss off. I'm not doing anything. So they created Homo sapiens.
Okay.
And so Nimma herself, had figured it out what to do and figured out it had to be in the bottle. Be carried in the body of an Anunnaki female. And so her
okay.
brother Enki said, "Oh, put it in my wife Damkina." And she said, No, this is too dangerous. We don't know what's going to happen. I shall bear this child.
Oh.
So she bore it and gave birth, and she held it out. And
You
that'll
could
be our.
almost call her Mother Nature.
She said, she's Mother Nature. She said, "With mine own hands I have created it," and that's one of the pictures we'll be
slide
showing.
one.
Slide one.
Okay, slide one. We'll bring up slide one.
And then it went on from there. They had Damkina bore the first human female. They had a second generation where they, or second experiment where they they took the rib and they made it so that the human females could procreate. Otherwise, the Anunnaki goddesses were continually to give birth, required to give
clones,
birth,
yeah.
and they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to just be a bunch of wombs,
They didn't want to be
being
surrogates.
pregnant all the time,
Exactly.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that kind of how that explains what we know as Mary and the Christian, because they say she's a virgin, but then she gives birth. So it's like how back then, if there's no technology, no anything like that, it's like how would they be able to, so it is obviously some sort of alien
really
race that did it,
controversial
right?
when you bring Jesus into this.
Yeah, maybe we'll just leave it right there. We don't want to
We
turn
can
off.
do that in a future show.
Yeah, we'll do that in a future. But I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about, right? That sort of thing, and how the different stories started and such. And
however, Enki loved to make love to the humans, and you want to tell them about the second Adam and Eve?
Yeah, 200,000 years ago, he decided that he would. The commander was on him. Hey, these people ain't working enough. Get them working harder. Make smarter ones that'll work harder. And so he said, I know just how to do that. And he found two beautiful girls. And he made babies with each of them. And one of the babies was named Adapa. The other was named Titi. And he and his wife, Damkina and Nimma, raised these children. And Adapa was a total genius. And everybody and Enki taught him everything he knew. The king of Nibiru said, send him, I want to see this creature. So they rocketed Adapa and two of Enki's sons back to Nibiru. And Enki and the king had agreed, don't give him long-lasting life because we'll be in danger, and and send him back to be a breeder. And so that was the ruling from Nibiru.
Oh.
And they sent Adapa back, and that was 200,000 years ago.
Wow.
And then at Marduk's wedding, the son of Enki, Marduk, a prince who felt he was cheated out of being king of Nibiru, he arranged it so that his astronaut friends, they had an astronaut base on Mars where they transshipped the gold, came down for this wedding. And after Marduk and his earthling wife Sarpanit went to Egypt, where Marduk had a fief, the Igigi, that's the name of the astronaut corps, seized 200 of the women, and they took over Baalbek and Lebanon and said, recognize our marriages and our right to live here, or we'll blow you to bits. And so that's how we get all these tall people in Jericho. People like Goliath was one of them. Oh. And they're here. Their descendants are here. They play for USC.
So and run through the Sierra Nevada foothills and get people taking pictures of them. Well, these stories seem to have a lot of familiar sounding tones to me as a novice, and I'm sure for many in the audience. And to me it sounds like it mirrors, or Greek mythology mirrors those stories.
Yes, there's the same stories. All over the world we get the same stories. The Hindu say the same thing. In Southeast Asia, we have a place called Angkor Wat, which was created by a guy named Pea, who's one of them, and they knew how to do. It's called chemically bonded cement. One rock a mile long on each of 4 walls. We can now do that with something called Brown's gas, which doesn't just make aggregate. It turns stone to liquid, and then you put it in a mold.
Wow.
But this was a global society, and we have the evidence everywhere. So the pyramids, they're uncovering more and more pyramids now that they have the sonar. Yeah. And the pyramids are part of a global energy grid, just like we have a grid.
Now wait a second, you just said they uncovered pyramids with sonar.
Absolutely.
So sonar is used in oceans and water, right?
Right.
So are you saying there's pyramids that they've found that are under the water right
now?
now?
Not only under the water, just underneath the jungles, and looking at mountains, and then they start looking inside and they go, that's not just a mountain, that's a pyramid under there. So there's a big Bosnian pyramid, there's pyramids in China, there's a big pyramid up in Alaska that apparently is still working. And
we know they work too.
This is a report from
now you're saying the
Whitley
pyramid,
Strieber and
now aren't the I'm taking the layman's
term, go ahead.
especially for the audience. I know there's people out there saying pyramids are just where they buried the pharaohs.
Oh no, there's no pharaohs in the Great Pyramid. There's no bodies. There's no trace of bodies.
But how could it work? It's just
the way
a pile
it works
of stones
is
and blocks,
they
right?
underneath they ran water from the Nile, and then they pumped it, pump, 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 and there's telluric waves that run through the earth. And
I
just
guess you
before,
better describe telluric.
there's gravitational waves that go one direction, and then as the temperature changes, they go the other direction. So if you capture that change, it's called piezoelectric. So it's going like this. Then they pump, pump, pump. Then above it, it's hydrated zinc, HCl, brought together. It makes an explosion of hydrogen. So you have pump. You have telluric wave, you have pump, you have this explosion,
like it's going to take some explanation.
and then you have a series of crystals, and out the top, and they pick up, that's electricity, it's a microwave, they pick it up in monoliths, and how does the light shine in Shangri-La or Luxor? They had electricity. They could charge their aircraft and their stations with this electricity.
Well, speaking of electricity, our power bill is about to go out.
Okay.
Our show is actually almost up, believe it or not. It
Wow.
seems like we've only been here 2 or 3 minutes chit-chatting, and actually we only got about 2 minutes left, so I wanted you guys to, we're going to continue this in part 2 of this show, so for the audience, they'll be able to get the rest of the story, but real briefly, why don't you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and learn more about your books? You've written several books, you have a radio program.
Why don't you show the book first?
Okay, well, this is the book that summarizes it way from the history on Nibiru, where how things got started and are still going, right up to the time of Alexander the Great.
So they can find that on your website. What's your website?
It's called EnkiSpeaks.com.
EnkiSpeaks.com. Okay, great.
And then we have a sequel, which is
Gives more
Anunnaki,
detail.
Legacy of the Gods. We have a third one coming out probably March or April when we get home and finish editing it.
And that'll be EnkiSpeaks.com as
It
well?
all on EnkiSpeaks.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you know what? We're going to have you hang out here for a little bit and we'll get restarted with the second show. But in the meantime, I'd like to just go ahead and thank everybody for tuning in to the Cosmic Cafe show. And most importantly, I want to thank our affiliates, the TV stations, the public access stations all across this country that are carrying this show. Please let them know how much you appreciate this show and want to see more episodes. You can also find us on social media. Everything can be linked through our website, cosmiccafeshow.com. Again, thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you very much for Janet and Dr. Sasha for stopping by, and I hope everybody goes ahead and sticks around for the second episode.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Way cool.
Way cool, yeah. So we'll just kind of chit-chat here for a minute.